My name is Zenas Quarantine Mensa, and this is my final project. And I did my final project on suicide attack dataset. So, a suicide attack is essentially any violent attack which the attacker expects to take his own life as a result to just harm other people. And this has been something that's been occurring through history from a long, long time ago, throughout World War One, World War Two, and recently after the 9/11 attacks, has been something that's been prevalent in our world. And the data set that I'm going to be using is data that's been retrieved from the Chicago Project on Security of Terrorism, and they basically retrieved a whole bunch of information on suicide attacks from 1982 going on through September of 2015, and that's basically what this is about, essentially. So an abstraction is essentially a method of simplifying real-world complex problems that are put into properties. And basically, what happens is in the abstraction, you remove the irrelevant information from the real-world entity that you're observing, and that's where you simplify it so that it can be understood by the computers. So in this final project, I'm going to be abstracting the real-world problem of suicide attacks, and the suicide attacks is basically being abstracted into a list of attacks that has many properties, and those properties, the properties that I'm going to be essentially studying, is the religion property, which is a string that describes the religion of the attacker, because that's what my question pertains to. And I also want to know about the age and year, which both are numeric properties, and they basically represent the age of the suicide attacker and also the year of the suicide attack. So as you can see here in my structure of my data, I have my list of attacks, which is the abstraction, which is what has been abstracted of the worldwide entity of suicides. And in that abstraction, you have a whole bunch of keys of dictionaries, and you have the attacker, the campaign, the date, the groups, the statistics, and the target. And what I'm going to be basically looking at is the attacker key of this dictionary. And in the attacker key, I'm going to be looking at the ages of the attackers and their religion of their attackers, and as well as the year where each attack was happened. So just like every other data set, this specific data set has limitations as well. And for this particular data set, you're not necessarily going to find everything you're looking for. Like, you're not going to be given as much detail as you can, because not everything was necessarily recorded by CPOST. And one thing that I noticed was that when I was doing my research on the religions, I got a whole bunch of unknowns after I completed my code, meaning that they were never actually recorded. It was just unknown of the attackers of what religion they were. So stuff like that is things that could cause a problem. So because suicide attacks are increasingly becoming a problem in our society, Georgetown University scholar Bruce Hoffman just conducted a research experiment and discovered that pretty much most of the suicide attacks that happen between the age ranges of about 20 to about 29 ish. And something that he noted was that the average of the 9/11 hijackers of ages were between 24, while the suicide bombers in Palestine were about 21. So with this data set, the Chicago Project of Security and Terrorism might want to know what the distribution of ages of attackers are. Interestingly enough, when you actually look at this visualization that I came up with my code, you can see that indeed Hoffman was correct. It seems like people between the age range of about 20 and 30 are the most likely to commit some type of suicide attack. And as you can see with this one, the elderly of people, as the ages increase, the amount of likeliness where they're going to conduct such an attack decreases, and the younger they are, it also decreases. But when they get to that adolescence age, that's when it starts increasing. And this can only tell you that pretty much there must be something going on with the hormones and stuff. People are imbalanced, in control of their body, so they're more likely to do something so reckless. So because of the rapid increase of the suicide attacks, governments might want to know if there are trends in the rates of suicide attacks over time, so that they're going to be able to use it to create programs to make improvements to decrease the amount of suicide attacks over time. So something to note from this visualization is that 0 represents 1981, and all the way over here where the graph ends is equal to 2015. And over time, it's evident that the amount of suicide attackers have been increasing over the years. And throughout 1995 to about 2005, the number tremendously spiked up. That was where it says about 20 and about 2000, and about 25. And in that time frame, the number of suicide attacks just spiked up to a different level. So governments might want to know this to be able to figure out what they need to do if suicides are increasing or decreasing. It's going to help them figure out what to do. Interestingly enough, ever since 9/11, there's been an ethical debate pretty much about whether or not racial profiling certain groups should be right or not because of their religion or where they come from. It's very interesting because this topic relates directly into suicide attacks. Government officials are basically trying to figure out whether they should profile people in order to secure the nation better in a way. And they might want to know what the comparison is between the amount of suicide attackers in different categories of religions. That's probably how they want to go about creating security for the country. According to this data, seems like Hindus have a greater amount of suicide attackers, then followed by the Muslim Sunni groups, and onto like the secular, which means like people who don't really have a religion, they're just political in any sense, with Christians having the least amount. And essentially, if you added both of these Muslim groups, Muslims would have more. But then like government officials might want to use this data to like better figure out how to go about solving things. It's not right. It's an ethical debate still going on today. So yeah. So there's a couple of reasons why this data information would be important to certain groups of people, and it'll be important to a couple stakeholders, which should be the policymakers, the insurance companies, police departments, investigative agencies, attackers and targets, and the media. And the policymakers will want to use this information because they would need to have accurate data on suicide attacks in order to like inform budgetary decisions about the amount of resources that are needed to basically create improvement programs that will prevent the number of suicide attacks from increasing. And life insurance companies will be affected because the data, if their clients are the ones that are being victims of suicide attacks, they're going to need to know this information because they're going to have to pay life insurance when the victim is killed. Investigative agencies will use this report to basically come up with new tactics of how to go against suicide attackers. And the conflicts and pressures are basically that the suicide attackers are conflicted because they're using this information to find loopholes and methods of attack. Meanwhile, the government and other agencies are using this information to prevent these situations. So they're being conflicted of what to do, and essentially is going to keep increasing unless like the other group decides to come up with better tactics. So in conclusion, all the information that I've been given to you from my final project gives information about the data set that pertains to the debates of the 21st century. The most recent debate, which is about whether racial profiling or profiling of any certain type of group with the intent of reducing like suicide attack rates is wrong. This is what this data set is pretty much about. And the data can be definitely used as grounds for policy making by the government in order to protect its citizens.